Hello and welcome to Chapter 5 of this RWBY fanfiction reading of I Need You So Bad by PrismaticBumbleby. And yeah, so we're going to be starting with Part 5, or Chapter 5, and moving on further. Hopefully we can get a little bit more than just 4 chapters done like last time. I don't know, we'll figure it out. Let's go! The Bumble and the Bees. Do it. That was the only thing on Blake's mind as she stared at the blonde-haired beauty before her, her heart beginning to pound harder as she continued to look upon Yang's face. The blonde-haired began to start flourishing. She was obviously feeling nervous, or something from the fauna staring at her for the amount of time that seemed like forever. She's blushing. This is the time. I have to do this now or else. Ying was about to speak to break the silence, but she wasn't able to break the silence. Instead, she found a soft pair of lips against her own. Blake was now kissing her. Wait, she's kissing me. No way. Okay, act cool. Your crush has finally kissed you. Yang did the complete opposite of cool. She had given a small squeak, losing her balance and stumbling back a bit, but still held the kiss. The blonde soon regained her composure and began to lean into the kiss, sliding her arms around the girl's neck, resting comfortably against the raven-haired faunus' small frame. Blake soon pulled away, her cheeks now the brightest they have ever been. The only thing that could rival what would be the completely flustered blonde across from her. The raven-haired girl had to admit Yang looked adorable when she was flustered. There was a small amount of silence between the two, Yang rubbing her neck nervously as she looked down, kicking an imaginary pebble, while Blake kept her eyes locked on the blonde, reaching up and throwing her arms around the blonde with so much force she knocked the tall blonde to the ground. A small yelp left Yang as she fell to her back, Blake landed comfortably on her chest and nuzzling against her warm frame. So can I be your first relationship? Blake's voice came in a gentle tone, her amber hues looking up at the blonde as she waited for an answer. Of course, I'd be honored, Blake, as long as I can be your first. Yang's response came in a slightly nervous yet somewhat confident tone. True, both of them had never dated before, but they were both confident about this being their first. I've always liked you, Blake, ever since we met in the forest. You were so awesome and mysterious, not to mention drop-dead gorgeous. I'm surprised I have you as a girlfriend now, Yang added, reaching down to pet the girl's head, her big goofy grin slowly forming once more on her face. Blake gave a small nod and a gentle smile. Then came a slightly nervous giggle that made the blonde quirk an eyebrow. Well, you see, I kind of stalked you in the forest. Well, I picked you on purpose. No one else was going to be your partner but me. The raven-haired assassin turned away, hiding her brightening blush as she confessed. Yang gave a small giggle and continued to run her fingers through the feline's hair. Aw, Blakey, that's romantic in a way. I'm honored. Her smile showed her honesty as she leaned down to peck the girl's forehead. Blake took the initiative to leap up into the girl so she didn't have to stress her back too much for the kiss. It was nice to have Yang's kisses, and now they were only for her and no one else. A small click of a camera filled the silence of the room. Ruby and White stood in front of the doorway, both in shock and amazement. Wow, I knew it, came Ruby's childish voice as she stared down at the two. White held her scroll in her hands as she saved the photo she had just taken into her scroll storage. A sly smirk curling into her lips as she placed her scroll back into her satchel. Well, it is about time you two decided to do something like that. I thought you two would never notice each other. Wace's voice was somewhat lifted, stress-free from everything else in the world. Maybe being with RWBY. Did they do something? Yang and Blake were both Yang and Blake were both fully flustered, both their faces now completely crimson from the position they were in. A small growl came from Yang, not Blake, but it caused the faunus to curiously tilt her head and roll her eyes at the blonde, plopping her head back down onto the brawler's soft chest. Relax, dragon, I think she's right, Blake said as she nuzzled herself into her partner. Yang huffed and slowly nodded, raising her hand to continue to pet the raven-haired girl. Fine, but why are you two here? Weren't you two heading to class? We saw you both down in the courtyard, Yang asked, her tone not even holding the slightest bit of anger, more of embarrassment. Weiss shook her head and looked over at her red-headed partner and leader. Ruby forgot one of her textbooks that she needs for class. We were going to go over everything before class started. But yeah, that's when we walked in up here and found you two, like this, Weiss said, looking over at her teammate that had been rubbing the back of her head in a sheepish manner. I'm sorry, Weiss. We were just in such a rush. I forgot to pack it, Ruby said as she looked down, putting on the exact show that she had given Weiss when they first met. Looking down and pressed her fingers together in an apologetic way, her silver gunmetal hues slowly traveling up to it to meet with ice blue hues. Okay. What? Wow. Yang and Blake had used the time to slowly get up from the awkward position they had been in on the floor, cautiously sitting down on the assassin's own bed as they watched the two others in their little scene, which both had agreed on being both adorable and cute at the same time. Payback time. Yang grinned as she looked at her sister and her partner. Daw, well, aren't you two the best secretly gay girlfriends ever? The brawler's voice pierced the heiress in the young leader's ears, causing Weiss to flourish more than her partner. What are you talking about? I know of no such thing. I'm not gay, Weiss said as more of a question than an answer, as she slowly looked over at the auburn-haired girl, still poking her index fingers together. Blake smirked and laid her head on her new girlfriend's shoulder, a small purr rumbling in her chest as she watched the other's body language and movements that seemed to make everything obvious. Was that a question or an answer, Weiss? Came the fauness's voice, filled with delight as she watched the heiress squirm with her feelings. The ivory-haired heiress huffed and turned around, heading out the door. I have no idea what you're talking about, the heiress yelled back at them as she walked down the hall, leaving an immensely flustered Ruby behind. Soon the heiress returned and dragged the team leader by the hood and grabbed the team leader by the hood and dragged her out of the dorm. Come now, Ruby. You came back, Ruby said happily as she was drugged down the hallway. Alright, that makes sense. So, this is so far the best day of my life, Blake said as she nuzzled her head against the blonde's shoulder once more, her ears slowly twitching under bow as she began to purr once more. Yang nodded and wrapped an arm around the girl's shoulder, a happy sigh escaping her as she turned to face the raven-haired girl, planting a small kiss to her forehead as she gave a firm nod. Same here, kitten, same here. Rejection and acceptance. That's a nice one chapter. I imagine this is going to become slower and slower, which is not exactly that great, but whatever, I guess. Yeah, alright, whatever. Rejection and acceptance. I already said that, but whatever. The Bumblebee duo opened the door of their dorm room, stepping out, keeping their hands together, fingers intertwined with each other's own. Yep. The two decided it'd be best to hurry and get to class. Not that they didn't have time, but just to go and talk with each other along the way. The dorm hallways were silent. All the other students had either been asleep or already heading to class, but both appreciated the silence they got. Yang slowly came to a halt, causing the raven-haired fauness to stop with her. Blake, can I have a hug? She asked, letting go of the girl's hand and opening her arms for the girl. Blake gave a nod, her smile curling onto her lips, while a small blush made its way onto her features. The assassin wrapped her arms around the girl's waist and buried herself into the blonde brawler, nuzzling herself against the warmth. Yang let her arms slide around the girl's frame, smiling and planting a kiss to the girl's head. You must really like my hugs, huh? She asked. Well, yeah, I can hear your heart. It's beating so fast, Blake said as she kept her head on the girl, her bow twitching as the girl's heartbeat got faster and harder. Yang's cheeks began to flourish a bright hue of crimson as she nuzzled her head against the other's. That's because of you, Blake, she spoke, slightly embarrassed. They had just gotten together. Anyone would be embarrassed. Blake pulled her head away and looked up at the slightly taller blonde, giving her a pleased smile. Yang gave the girl her own smile as her lilac gaze locked with deep amber hues. She placed a hand on behind Blake's head and pressed her lips against the other's own, her cheeks beginning to brighten to an even brighter hue. God, I suck at reading this. Blake was taken a bit aback by the kiss. At first it was rough, but it slowly became tender and loving. The two parted only for a second for breath, but quickly kissed again. Blake gripping at the back of the brawler's shirt. She didn't want to stop. It was like these kisses were an addiction to her, an addiction she needed to keep, something that she could never get over. But the two had to part. Blake and Yang weren't at the state where they could hold their breath for a long period of time. The duo were both panting, Yang's cheeks a brighter hue than the faunus' own. Yang, that was amazing, Blake spoke through her panting, still trying to capture her breath. Yang gave a small nod as she continued panting, while Blake just gave a slight muffled giggle at the blonde's actions. It was rather cute to see her like this, but she began to think. I changed so much. I used to be so silent, but now I'm happy. Blake slowly reached up and rubbed the brawler's cheek with her thumb, keeping one of her arms firmly around the blonde's waist. Yang's entire face was soon overtaken in red. Even though it was aflame, she felt as Blake could melt her. That's not supposed to work. Nevertheless, Blake had a firm grip around Yang's heart, and that goes for Blake's heart. Yang was holding it. They were each other's hearts, and the very reason for their existence. Yang placed a hand on the other's own that was cupping her cheek. You're so gentle with me, Blake, she said in a hushed tone as she leaned closer to the other, placing a small kiss on her forehead. Well, of course, why wouldn't I be, she asked, as another small giggle escaped the faunus, her cheeks still dusting a bright rosy hue. She had to admit, this was indeed the best love story she's ever heard of, her own, with the beautiful brawler, Yang Xiaolong. Hey, Blake, Yang asked, as she slowly and cautiously reached up to cup the girl's cheeks with her palms, feeling her heart rate pick up once more. Maybe this was the reason for her dream she's been having. Yes, dear, Blake asked, keeping her gaze set on lilac hues as they stared back into her soul, piercing her through every inch. Blake's bow twitched a few times as she waited for the girl to speak again. She had piqued her curiosity. I've been having this dream, and well, you've been in it, and I've been having it for a long time. Something I always ask is what I want to say now. She took a deep breath and looked down, gathering her courage and looking back up, her face still the same crimson hue. Say you'll haunt me. Blake tilted her head slightly, but quickly began to nod as she pulled the girl into a tight hug, nuzzling herself against the girl's frame once more. Of course I will, Yang. I will always be with you, but it sounds like a marriage proposal, silly. She grinned and reached up behind the blonde and playfully swatted the girl's golden blonde locks. Yang felt her heart jump slightly as she began to scratch her cheek in a sheepish manner. Sorry, my bad. Yang was completely embarrassed again. That's how many times in 1 hour? No, it's fine, Yang, don't worry. She giggled at the girl, stuttering, and lightly pecked the girl on the cheek before the two slowly began to walk again, walking out of the dormitories and looking around. Blake's amber hues caught the sight of a tall blonde male, faunus, standing beside a tree. Yang, I got to take care of something real quick. I'll be back, sweetheart. Yang gave a nod, letting go of the girl's hand as she crossed her arms and looked around and headed for a nearby bench. Hope she's not too hard on him. Blake slowly walked up to the man. Hey, son, can we talk? She asked as she kept her distance from the blonde male. Huh? Oh yeah, sure, Blake, what's up? He asked as he turned his full attention to the raven-haired feline. Look, I know you like me, but I'm afraid I don't return your feelings. I honestly consider you as a brother more than anything, and plus, I'm also, Blake began, scratching the back of her head. Now she was happy that she finally found out who she was. It was just the person who she was about to tell, the person who has a crush on her, but she didn't return the feelings for him. You're dating Yang, and you're gay, so what? He started, giving the girl a smile as he began to chuckle and shake his head. I don't care, that's fine by me. I'm not going to try and change you or anything. That's a bummer for Neptune. He actually digged Yang. Guess she doesn't like him either. Not really. Yang actually told me that she's not really all that into men. It's a joke, something about wanting to act cool for RWBY. Hopefully now she realizes she doesn't have to do that. But anyways, thank you, son. She returned the boy's smile and gave him a gentle punch to the arm. Hey, don't mention it. And well, I guess you never know about anyone's true sexual orientation until you get to know them. That's wrong that most people go ahead and judge someone before they know more about them. Yes, I'll admit Yang had me fooled, but I didn't go around calling her a slut or saying she dressed as one like other people. Who said she's a slut? Oh, shit. Blake, don't worry about son started, but was quickly interrupted by Blake. Whoever they are, I will fucking murder them. No one is going to call Yang a slut, or anything for that matter. She's not. She's one of the most innocent things ever. Yes, she makes jokes and goes to clubs, but not once has she dated, had sex, or done anything, or ever done anything. We're fucking teenagers, not adults. How dare they think that? Blake had finally snapped. She was tired of people thinking of her blonde dragon as such. She would find whoever started that and personally take care of them. Blake, please calm down. It's nothing to worry about. Me and Neptune will take care of it. We will, I promise, the blonde male said as he set his gaze on the fired-up Faunus. Blake had begun to growl in a low tone, clenching her fists together and throwing her fist against a nearby tree. Fine, but you better hope you get to them before I do. Son nodded quickly. You got it, sis, he said as he felt the anger radiating from the Faunus as she walked away. He sighed and looked over at the tree. A small indentation of Blake's fist was left. Whoa, I hope I do get to them first. It'll be easier than what Blake will do. Blake scanned the area for the blonde, her amber gaze catching the sight of the blonde sitting at a bench. She felt the anger slowly fade away as she smiled and walked over, sitting down next to her. So how'd everything go? Blake, your hand! Yang said in shock. Blake's knuckles were bleeding and scraped up. What did you do? Blake squeaked slightly as she heard the blonde's voice get louder with concern. I guess I kind of got a little angry and punched a tree. She looked down at her numb hand. I'm sorry. No, it's fine. Don't talk. We're taking you to the nurse right now to get your hand better. She got up and pulled the girl with her, being careful not to even touch the girl's bloody hand. Blake found herself suddenly in the blonde's arms. So this is what it's like to be carried like a princess, she thought as she wrapped her arms around the girl's neck to keep herself even more secure in the blonde's arms. Even though she didn't need it, she already felt so secure. Maybe I went a little overboard. At least the good thing is that there will actually be some fighting later on, which is quite nice. Playing doctor. Blake, why did you do this to your hand? Yang asked, carefully holding up the raven-haired girl's wounded hand, her lilac hue shifting from the hand to the Faunus' amber hues, obviously waiting for an answer. I don't like it when people spread rumors, especially about you being a slut. It's just wrong and disrespectful to call a woman that. They don't even know you, Blake said as she felt her anger slowly return at the idea of someone to even have the guts to call such a beautiful girl that. Yang just shook her head and rubbed the other girl's cheeks, softly stroking it with her thumb. It's okay, Blakey. If they want to act like fools, let them. I'm with you and only you. You're the first person I ever dated, let alone a girl. The blonde let out a small giggle as she leaned up to peck the Faunus' forehead. The raven-haired assassin's cheeks slowly began to brighten to a light pink hue. A small sigh of defeat leaving her. Curse this girl and her ability to call me. It's not fair, she thought to herself as she looked away and nodded. Feeling the blonde's gaze still on her, Blake turned to the other girl and leaned over, quickly pecking the girl on her lips. I'm still gonna kick the guy's ass that spreaded that rumor. I guess you will. I can't stop you on that, she giggled, lightly tracing her lips, still trying to figure out how their lips are finally able to touch. I'm glad we're together now. We can finally kiss. I never thought it would happen. Blake tilted her head slightly, her bow giving a small twitch as she listened to the blonde. I know, I should have acted sooner, but I guess reading all those romance novels doesn't really help with confessing your love, Blake said as she gave a small shrug. But I'm glad as well. I love you, Yang. I love you too, Blake, honey. Yang responded before opening the door to the before hitting the door to the room open, watching as a woman walked with a smile as she walked up to the couple. "Hello, I'm not sure I've seen you two in here before," the nurse said as she looked at Blake's bruised and bloodied hand. "Oh my, that doesn't look good. Here." She opened a cabinet above a shelf, pulling out a bottle and cotton ball. The nurse opened the container and put the ball of cotton to the opening and tilted the container, allowing the ball to be wetted by the contents of the container. "Alright, this might sting a little, but it'll help." The raven-haired girl nodded as she presented her hand to the nurse, watching as she got closer and feeling herself being filled with what felt like anxiety. I can do it, nurse. I'm sure you have other students in need of assistance right now, so please, I'll do it," Yang said as she stepped in front of her girlfriend slightly, her smile never fading from her lips. "Oh, well, I guess you're right." She handed the blonde brawler the cotton ball and container of liquid. "There are bandages in the cabinet above the shelf. Wash her hand thoroughly and wrap in bandages, and she'll be good to go. Take care." And with that, the nurse left the two. Yang nodded and grabbed the container and the ball of cotton from the nurse, hearing the door softly click shut. She sat down next to the faunus and smiled. My, what a cute patient I have here. What seems to be the problem here, cutie?" Blake's cheeks slowly heated up from the girl's compliment, her cheeks now a rosy tinted hue. My hand is all the nurse, and I'm in need of kisses," she said, slightly embarrassed for going along with Yang's silly acting, but she did enjoy it in a way. Yang placed the container of liquid over on the counter next to them and leaned over and kissed the girl, placing one hand against the back of the faunus's head, allowing the kiss to become more close and loving. As she slowly pulled away, she looked down at the girl's hand, tapping her chin before reaching over to the shelf where she put the container. "Okay, so how about we take care of your hand, Blake simply nodded as her cheeks stained in a light crimson hue, offering her hand to her partner. "Yes, please, thank you," Blake quietly whispered as she kept her amber hues locked on the girl. Yang nodded happily as she opened the container and put the cotton ball to the top and tilted upside down to let the contents wet the ball of cotton. Wasn't it already soaked? Whatever. Once it was well soaked, she placed the container back on the shelf next to them and gently took a hold of her partner's hand and lightly brushed the cotton ball on the cuts and scrapes on Blake's hand. The raven-haired faunus closed her eyes as she felt a small tingling sensation come from her hand and bit her lip to quiet any noises that might slip from her. Her ears soon flicked underneath her bow as she heard her partner's words. "All right, all done. Now time to bandage you up," Yang said, as giddy as ever. Yang looked around for the medical tape for a moment before turning around and spotting the cabinet they were in. She walked over and opened it, reaching inside and pulling out a roll of tape. "Okay, let's let it clean out your wounds before I wrap you up. Wrap your hand up, all right?" Yeah, wow. Blake gave another nod of her head, waiting for the liquid to clean her cuts, slightly tapping her foot before speaking up. "You know something, Yang? You'd make a pretty good mother and wife," she said as her blush soon returned to her pale cheeks. Yang's own cheeks began to brighten as she heard the faunus' words. "Well, I wouldn't mind being a mother if you were with me. I'm sure we could figure something out to allow two females to have a child," she said as she rubbed the back of her head and gave a big goofy smile. Blake leaned forward slightly, planting a kiss to the brawler's head. "Of course, I'm sure there's something. I mean, there's only thousands of dusts with different effects, remember?" "Oh yeah, that is true. Maybe I could talk to Weiss about that later," Yang responded, nuzzling up against the kiss to her forehead as her mind was suddenly filled with images of a future family with the faunus in front of her. "All right, be careful though. Who knows how Blake was cut off by a pair of soft lips against her own. Even though Yang was perhaps the best fighter in all of Vale, she was still gentle when it came to her special little faunus. Everything she did was gentle with the girl, no matter what. Yang slowly pulled away, a small giggle leaving her as she poked the other's nose, watching as the faunus' cheeks began to brighten again. "Relax, Blake. I'm sure she wouldn't mind me asking. Besides, I'm sure she wants a child of her own with my little sister," Yang said with a grin crossing her features as she crossed her arms, looking accomplished. "My little sister, RWBY, melting the Ice Queen's heart. I almost expected it." Blake tilted her head slightly before giving a shrug. "Well, as you said, she has the power to turn straight woman gay, but I don't think she was straight to begin with, but that's my opinion. I mean, the way she was acting towards her was basically screaming, "Kiss me," you know, Blake said, but once more felt the same soft pair of lips against her own, only causing her blush to grow even brighter. Yang held the kiss for a while longer as she brushed the Faunus' raven locks away from her forehead, pulling away again and pressing her own forehead against the other's. So that's what you were screaming at me too. So that's what you were screaming at me too, huh? Yang giggled before pulling away to watch the girl's reaction to the second surprise kiss she gave her. Yes, thanks again, Blake whispered, and she looked down to her now slightly dried hand. I think you can put the bandages on now. Oh, right, gotcha, Yang responded as she gently took the girl's hand in her own and began to wrap the bruised palm up, allowing it to be protected from any dirt or any other infectious things. Once Blake's hand was completely bandaged up, Yang sat the container of liquid and roll of medical tape back where she got them. She turned and walked back to her partner, taking the girl's hand once more and gently kissing it. There we go. Now, shall we get to class, silly? Sure, Yang, and I'm not the silly one. You are. Whatever you say, kitten. Oh, God. Okay, so that was actually 4 chapters, I think. No, that was only 3. All right, whatever. This is gonna take a while. Okay. All right. We'll do this one next time. Yeah. So coming up soon, obviously this part, Heated, the third part, including Heated, and then also Ice Cream. The next part of Ice Cream, and yeah, that's it. I don't know. This one's going to be a quite good chapter. I can tell you that much from what I read before. Or from what I looked at before when I was trying to figure out what this story exactly was.